All right, today is March 23rd, 2020. I have a little bit of good news, I think. Obviously, the death numbers are going up. Overall, the death number currently, it's 5:10 p.m., is 16,350. However, Italy, who has had the absolute worst infection and death rate recently, they seem to potentially have peaked on March 21st. So March 21st, Italy had 6,557 cases. And then on March 22nd, which was yesterday, they had 5,560. They have been seeing very significant growth since March 16th. And, maybe we could hope that this is the top of their curve and they could start slowing down at this point. Now, they haven't had a perfect exponential curve. If you look at this chart here, you can see a few little dips where it looks like, oh, maybe we've reached the top, and then it keeps going up again.
Spain, more than 29,000 cases as officials there moved to extend a state of emergency for another 15 days. And in Germany, Chancellor Angela Merkel is self-quarantining as a precaution, where there are also signs of hope out of Asia. We're going to have more on that in a moment, but first, Ian Panels in London with the very latest. Good morning to you, Ian.
Good morning, Michael. That's right. A surge in cases across Europe. In Italy, it's now 2 weeks since it went into almost total lockdown, and yet the number of cases there continues to rise. This morning, Italy waking to ever tighter restrictions on movement. Now, some factories ordered to shut as the death toll from coronavirus now closes in on 5,500 people and the number of cases nears 60,000. One medic in the hard-hit region of Lombardy saying they're not eating or even going to the bathroom during their shift because they need to preserve their protective gear. And now Spain in crisis, facing the third highest death toll in the world, with nearly 12% of all those infected health workers.
Even though you think that you're immune to it and nothing's going to happen to you, you could have problems because of it, you or someone in your family. So just really take responsibility for it and feel lucky that you can just stay at home.
So I was looking somewhere on Worldometer's website, and you probably use this more than I do, but it was showing the percentage, the change in percentage every day.
Yeah.
I saw this the other day, and I was just thinking, if you draw a line through the middle of these charts, it almost feels like there was a period around February 23rd or 26th where maybe everything was getting better, but then everything shot back up around the 29th, and it's like the trend line is changing. So if that's true, it just feels like maybe we're going through periods where it's slowing down, but then it's accelerating, and then it slows down and accelerates. And we're seeing that with Italy, right? There's times where, like a week ago, they said we're doing well, and then it went back up. Yeah. So it's not like a normal exponential curve where it just grows forever. It has a little bit more nuance in the numbers if you look at it on a day-to-day basis.
Have you been watching the news today?
Not really. I don't know if I'm just trying to shield myself from the news or if less has happened today. I know everybody out there has been very concerned about my mental well-being. And
As am I.
I have to say, I'm fine. A lot of this, I'm very passionate about a lot of these topics anyway. And people were like, Patrick's losing his mind and he's worried so much. And
a few people said that you're the only one who understands what's going on.
A lot of people.
I'm the one who's losing my mind.
A lot of people have said things like, Patrick is the only one in that room that has a grip on reality. And I keep screen capturing those.
I bet you do.
They're great. I love them.
You read them before bed each night. There's crazy people out there. I got into an argument yesterday with somebody about vaccines, and there's this clip of Bill Gates saying that he wants to lower the population of the world by giving children vaccines.
Yeah.
Or unleashing vaccines in third world countries. And they said, you see, it's proof that he's trying to kill children with vaccines.
Yeah.
And then you look further into it, and no, he said many times that when the death rate lowers over a population, parents choose to have fewer children because they don't need to have more, expecting many of them to die. But
That sort of reasoning doesn't make sense to.
well, it's not just the reasoning. It's like once you get your head hooked on something, like Bill Gates is trying to kill children, and then no matter what type of data you can show someone, they're just unwilling to listen.
There's a lot of people that believe some weird things with Bill Gates, and you see that spreading like crazy. I'm not going to get into it.
Please do not.
It's
get
crazy,
into
but it revolves around kind of what you were just saying.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not against looking into things, but people just love jumping to conclusions, and there's some conspiracies. The Epstein thing happened recently. Like, obviously some funny business is going on with that. I think we can all agree that some very high up people were involved in some horrible things, and something happened with his death that's not legal.
If people are quarantined and you're just looking for entertainment, it's a dark documentary series, but I know on Spotify they were showing it on television. I don't know what the organization is, but somebody produced a podcast of Epstein, and it's about 8 episodes.
I started listening to that. I need to finish it.
And I did it when I was going to the gym. I listened to the whole thing, and very interesting and very sickening. Like, there's just, it's crazy what he did. But what I found interesting about it is a lot of people discuss how did he come across his money? Because everybody says he doesn't seem to be a successful investor, yet he became a billionaire, like, in a decade. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And the podcast gets into that, which I found pretty interesting. But
well, back to COVID-19, I watched the Cuomo. I realize you've been saying his name. You've been calling him Como, and I've been calling him Cuomo. Governor Cuomo.
Andrew Cuomo.
Maybe, I don't know his name.
It seems like he's been doing a good job. Like,
he has been doing such a good job.
Here in Puerto Rico, we get New York City news for some reason, at least on the DirecTV on my floor. And so I'll see his press conferences, and he's sitting there for like an hour going through everything and talking about mental health and what you should expect. And
just being honest, but talking about full game plans and not just what we're doing today.
Yep.
And today was the first time I have ever heard a single person on TV start talking about, we need a game plan out of this because there's a chance that we're all going to catch it anyway, so we need a plan. And so he started talking about sending young people back to work soon.
Okay.
He started talking about doing tests on people to see if they had already captured the virus and recovered, and maybe they would be immune from it, and sending them back to work. I'm like, thank you. Somebody's actually talking about this. It seems like that would be the most important thing that we should have been talking about from day one. Not a single politician has talked about it, but he said he is seriously considering it. He's looking into all options. He's got scientists working on it. He's got mathematicians working on it and everything, and he hopes to have a plan soon, which makes total sense to me. As long as all these Gen Zers, want to go to the beach and everything, they can go back to work at American Eagle.
So we have to start to think about, does everyone stay out of work? Should young people go back to work sooner? Can we test for those who had the virus, resolved, and are now immune? And can they start to go back to work? There's a theory of risk stratification that Dr. Katz, who's at Yale University, is working on, which is actually very interesting to me, which says isolate people, but really isolate the vulnerable people. Don't isolate everyone, because most people are not vulnerable to it. And if you isolate all people, you may be actually exposing the more vulnerable people by bringing in a person who is healthier and stronger and who may have been exposed to the virus, right? Can you get to a point where the healthy, the people who are most likely not going to be affected, can go to work? Remember, you study the numbers across the countries that have been infected. The survival rate for those who have been infected is like 98%, right? A lot of people get it, very few people die from it. So how do we start to calculate that in?
One of the big questions that arises from this concept is, how long after you've had coronavirus are you then capable of going back out into the real world and not infecting people?
Yeah.
And the other one that's pretty scary is, are people able to get reinfected? Because last week or over the weekend, there's been some speculation that nurses and medical personnel on the front lines were obviously getting infected, but many of them got over it and they were there to help people in China. But then many of them got sick in some way once again. And I have this link here from Daily Mail. It says something about Beijing's leading doctor warns of new coronavirus outbreak in China. And whether or not that is a new outbreak of a whole new virus, which is kind of scary. It's like when you get the 1-2 punch from a hurricane, you know?
Right.
Or if this is like another strain from, you know, the SARS-2 virus that we're currently dealing with. But this is the big question. You don't want to send people back out if they're potentially still infecting others days after. And I know a lot of people, especially like that photographer that we've been mentioning on our channel, they have to get tested twice and come back negative before this CDC, I think, or maybe it's the World Health Organization, is saying you're eligible or you're able to go back out. Like, that's the proof that we need.
Well, I mean, I just feel like this finally sounds like people are thinking. I forget this photographer's name, but he looks like he's going to be recovered soon.
Yes.
If we could have some sort of pin on people that say, like, I am immune to this disease now. First of all, I think they could do a great job of comforting people. Like, hey, I've already been through this. I'm happy to talk to you about it, whatever.
Yeah.
I can help. I can deliver food. I can go back to work.
Yes.
I can work in the hospitals. I could be a photographer or a videographer working for the news and going into these hotspots. It just opens up so many possibilities. And then all these young people under 25 who almost seem immune anyway. It seems like they could kind of be going back to work, and if they get sick, just quarantine for a few days, and then they'd be over it.
Yeah. I think that's the most frustrating thing, is just it just feels like we don't have a game plan, and nobody's coordinating anything on like a national level. And I know some people are saying the states should be in control of their own municipalities and, you know, their people. That's kind of the states' rights versus, you know, government rights and stuff. But at some point, you're like, maybe we should lock down the country. That's what a lot of other countries are doing. But on every level, there is no coordination, and I feel like that's really frustrating.
Yeah.
It feels like Trump has done a good job of coordinating with New York and California, and where's the other big cities?
DC
Washington?
and Washington State.
I think that was the one yesterday. He did the news conference where he goes through and tells all of the supplies that are going to those 3 hot spots, because those are the ones that are mostly affected. But, you know, there's a lot of governors out there that are doing a really bad job. They're not suggesting the same protocols of other states, and maybe if you just have a smaller country, your prime minister or president just comes out and you make one swift decision. But in the United States, we're so big, it's like everyone seems to be doing different things. Here in Puerto Rico, I feel like we're already a week ahead of everybody. I mean, we've been quarantined for 8 days now.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, it was last like Sunday night.
my
Here we
gosh.
are on Monday afternoon.
I haven't been outside today. It's been rainy a lot, and so I'm getting a little cabin fevery.
You'll notice I was not here over the weekend. I think this is the part that we really need to take personal responsibility for. Saturday, I had a little low-grade fever. So, actually, probably a GI thing. But, you know, I'm meticulous. I'm a physician. I looked it up. I ended up piggy banking. I'm from Walter Reed, so I got a test late Saturday night, and I'm negative. I stayed home another day just just to make sure. That's how we protect one another.
So have you been keeping up with the big relief bill? That's kind of, so last night I saw the futures, maybe in the last video we said, the futures trading it hit a circuit breaker at -5.
Yeah.
And the whole fear was Congress is not going to pass any kind of stimulus bill, and today is going to be a horrible day. And I believe the day opened recovering a lot from that futures circuit breaker, and I think we opened around -1%. It didn't look nearly as bad as some people were saying.
We were only down around 3% at close today. Although one interesting piece of information that I have not yet seen on written, is that I believe now we are down on the S&P 500. We're down almost 2% from when Trump took office, and I think he took office around January 2017. So all of the Trump gains have now been erased. And he keeps saying, of course, he believes the second we get this under control, everything's just going to V-bounce right back up to where we were.
As I said, I think before, it looks like there's only been like one V recovery ever. I mean, maybe it depends on how big of the scope you look at. I'm sure you can find like V recoveries. And
well, once it drops below 20%.
Below 20%, and that was 2 years ago with the 2018 drop.
I mean, it seems like this would be the type of thing to create a V-bounce. Like if we created a vaccine tomorrow and the debt relief bill never got signed and they didn't spend $4 trillion or whatever insane amount of money giving people money to gamble in the stock market and buy crazy stuff. If none of that happened, maybe we could just go right back up. But of course, I have been preparing for an economic crash completely independent of a pandemic.
Yeah.
I've been expecting something based on the debt alone.
Yeah.
So who
or just on
knows?
the trend. Every 10 years, something big happens.
Right.
So you would expect that. Yeah, it's definitely hard to look at the stock market, although today I did pretty good. Like, I don't have a lot of money in the market, but my, can I just toot my own horn? My Zoom stock's up 22% today.
But is that up from when you bought it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's up like 47%.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I mean, yeah, look at that stock. That's a month.
Oh, wow. Okay,
it's
good
done
call
really
with that.
well. And I think more people are using Zoom.
Yeah.
And their business model is you get like 40 minutes for free. Maybe it's 45 minutes for free. And then after that, you have to pay for the subscription.
Okay. And what's the difference between Zoom and Skype and Facebook Messenger? And
I don't know all the ins and outs of what's different. I just know that I hate using Skype.
I used Skype today, and it would not work, and it was driving me crazy.
I'm trying to look up people with their username, and it's not finding them. And then I always want to close the program, and it's still running. It's kind of like Dropbox. Dropbox is another app that I can't stand the way that it works. It feels like it should be way easier than what it is. And I always have a computer back home that's like running out of storage because it's still syncing to a Dropbox, even though, I don't know. And I feel like Skype is like that too.
Pardon me.
So at least you're
got a little cough, but I've had a cough for like 2 weeks now.
Yeah, so how are you feeling in general? You still feel pretty good?
Mental health-wise or physical health-wise?
You can do everything.
Mental health-wise, I still feel pretty good. Like after that kiteboarding session a day or two ago.
That's all you needed?
Man, it like rejuvenated me. I feel a lot better. I probably was in the sun. I got some life back in me. Last night, Katie and I can't believe Katie wanted to watch this, but have you heard about this movie called Contagion that came out in 2011?
Of course, I haven't seen it.
Like everybody's talking about it and saying that, oh my gosh, like the movie is about what's going on right now. So I kept mentioning to Katie, like apparently there's this movie with Matt Damon that's about this.
Yeah.
Well, we start watching this thing last night. It is like exactly this. It is so weird, man. It's like they're picking it up in China, and it's a thing that came from a bat that morphed to this animal, and now it's a novel coronavirus. Like, it is so creepy to watch this movie.
Yeah.
And I haven't finished it because we got sleepy and we fell asleep halfway through. But we'll finish it tonight. And then today, on a more positive note, Half-Life Alyx came out today, which I have purchased a VR headset just to play this game.
Isn't it wild that, like, I don't want to say it took a pandemic, but during the pandemic is when a Half-Life game was finally released.
Right. We've been waiting 13 years for this game, and so I know for most people you don't care, but this is like a historic moment in the gaming industry. So I have been playing this game a lot today, and I feel like I'm kind of losing a grip on reality because I'm in this insane game. First, it's like zombies and things attacking me, but the virtual reality thing where I'm like moving my head around and stuff, and then when I take it off, I feel dizzy and loopy, and then I sit down on the computer and then I'm reading more horrific stories about what's going on, so it's probably not healthy.
Yeah.
Kiteboarding is probably very healthy for me. Playing video games where zombies are attacking me, probably the worst thing that I could be doing right now.
But overall, like, you feel like you don't have a cough, like you don't.
I have a cough. Katie has a cough, but I feel like we've had it for weeks, so I think we're good.
I don't know that I have a cough. Like, I find myself coughing, but I probably cough 10 times a day.
Yeah, it's not a super bad cough.
A couple days ago, maybe on Friday or Saturday, I mean, we were making videos every day. I said I had this feeling where, you know, after you skydive 2 hours later, you still have this jitterness.
Yeah, I kind of have that.
That's gone for me now. And I don't know if that was because I took Saturday off and did what everyone suggested and just chilled out, but that is gone, which is really nice. But I'm talking to so many people on the phone and just trying to catch up, and, you know, even here, like, I just start talking really quickly and I'm excited about things. I want to get it out. And I just find that I'm constantly feeling like a little overwhelmed, you know? Not from stress of the virus like I was a couple days ago, but just I wouldn't say I'm an introvert, but I like to just kind of chill and not have to, like, throw myself out a lot, even though we do in these videos. And so when I'm constantly doing that all day, I feel really drained at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm still thinking, like, I am, Friday will be my 14th day of being in quarantine from leaving Miami.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my day where I feel like, okay, I'm in a good place. Although I've heard many people say they still can get sick up to 20 days.
You just keep adding on.
Yeah, and
more
so
more
I've just been
days.
telling Kristen and I, we've been talking about this, and I'm like, I think once we both reach that 14 to 20 day period, which will happen soon, a lot of anxiety will probably leave in general, because we're all wondering, do we have the virus at this moment? And the amount of stress that adds to you is a lot more than I would have thought, you know? And when I start seeing people who have recovered from coronavirus that are on, you know, social media and stuff, a lot of them have said, just imagine if you had coronavirus, and then imagine if you had to go to the hospital. The amount of anxiety on you at that moment. Because when you first get it, you're like, oh my gosh, I got the fever. Like, I have it now. Mm-hmm. Even if you just could have had a potential normal fever, you know, but like you get the fever, and then if you have to, heaven forbid, you have to go to a hospital, the anxiety levels just rise up. And you start thinking, like, do I have everything ready? Like, do I have a will? And do I need to tell parents and family password? Like, your mind starts going to these really dark places, you know? And so I think in the next week, that will be a huge sigh of relief. But it still doesn't mean we're not going to get it. It just means that I didn't get it in Miami. And as long as we keep this house locked down, it does mean that I'm not going to get it. But the more that we start to, like, open up eventually, which is inevitable, the more that fear can come in that, like, they're saying 75% of Americans are going to get it. Is there any realistic chance that all four of us in this house could be the 25 that don't get it?
Seems very unlikely.
I don't know.
For how much we travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like we're going to get it. And, you know, in the last video, I revealed that I had gone kiteboarding and that one of my buddies and I had done jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
And there has been what seems to be a big debate amongst just a very few amount of people in the comments of the video on whether I'm being wildly dangerous by doing that, or, like, of course it's fine. We have to live our lives. We have contact with people all day, every day, but as long as we're staying out of groups and we're washing our hands and doing things, if I'm sitting across from you right now, we are definitely infecting each other. I watched this video that you recommended to me today.
I was going to recommend this to everybody. Is this the one with the whiteboard?
Yeah.
This is I will say, this is the greatest single video on coronavirus I've seen. And it's by Ninja Nerd Science. It's called COVID-19 Coronavirus Epidemiology. We'll put a link to it. But this guy is talking about the virus and the pathways and everything in so much detail. And you can tell he's not reading off a script. Like, he knows these pathways. And it's 50 minutes long. It's very science and molecular biology heavy.
This consolidation is going to be a problem, okay? Because this consolidation is also going to alter gas exchange. And if I alter the gas exchange process, I lead to hypoxemia, okay? Another thing is, again, go back. This whole thing can also, whenever there's the reactive oxygen species, it damages the type 1, type 2 alveolar cells, right? And as you do that, that leads to this significant alveolar collapse as well. We talked about that, right?
Did you watch much of it?
Yeah, I don't remember why I didn't finish it. Maybe Half-Life Alyx became live at 1 and I stopped in the middle of watching it to play, but
did you notice he talked about the oral fecal route?
he did talk about that. He did not link that to toilet paper purchases, but what he said that was probably in the half that I watched that was the most disturbing to me was that he said the virus can survive in air for up to 3 hours. So if someone breathes and then 2 hours and 45 minutes later you walk through where they breathed, you could get it, which that seems like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, I was talking to Mike Kelly today, and I was mentioning this because I sent him the video, and I can't remember, somebody we were talking to said, you know, airline planes, they don't filter their air with HEPA, filters or whatever. And so I talked to Mike, and he was like, I don't know about that. Like, I've talked to many pilots, and he says that the air is cleaned multiple times. It's like, and if you sit next to a window and you see all that fog and mist coming out, he's saying that that is the safest air, and it's coming from outside the plane and being circulated in. But regardless, I feel like if you get on a plane, it's like a 3-hour flight from Miami here.
I know.
I have to be breathing in the virus, and that's why I'm so concerned about that flight. But how bad is it really? I mean, I don't know.
And once again, what about public transportation in places like New York City, where you're packed onto a train with sealed windows?
Yeah, I wouldn't be on there.
And you're holding on to metal bars that 1,000 people have held right before you.
Yeah. This video is really disturbing, though, because it goes into the molecular biology on like how the virus gets into your lungs and how it goes into that ACE2 receptor, and it gets in the cell, and then it breaks apart, and the RNA starts duplicating itself, and it goes through every element of, like,
I need to finish it.
You start losing pressure in your lungs, so your lungs are collapsing. Meanwhile, you're releasing all of these inflammation markers, and that they're starting to call in more things that just it just compounds and compounds and compounds. And you watch this, and you're like, we're all going to die. But then you have to tell yourself 99% of people overcome this somehow. Like, when you just see the pathway, you're like, there's no way anyone's going to survive this. It starts attacking the liver. It's crazy what it can do.
Yeah.
But the majority of people, almost everybody, does win the battle, Their immune system's able to kill it. But super interesting video, and I think, like, everybody out there is talking about all the misinformation and everything. Like, this guy, he has it all down. And it's updated, like, a couple days ago, so maybe he'll make a new video as new science comes out. But
I was very impressed by it.
So here's something that I have been debating with some friends and family about, and that is the idea of this relief bill. And it's funny how people that I know really well that kind of fall on the right side, who are all against a lot of the socialism and the government handouts, are the first ones to be like, we need that money, And so I've been talking to many, many people, but I know I've had this specific conversation with my parents. And the conversation goes like this. We should just freeze everything so that we don't have to pay rent and we don't pay our mortgages, and we'll just freeze everything and everyone will be off the hook, and we'll just open up our society again in a month or two. Meanwhile, these short little payouts will, like, be a Band-Aid for the situation. And I keep saying, well, when you have to pay rent on a building, that would be great for you because you don't have to pay the rent and it's a huge relief for you. But if you're the guy who just owns one building and you need the rent and that's your income, it's like one party is getting a big benefit by not paying rent, and then the other party is being completely penalized.
No, well, that depends on if he has a mortgage. If his mortgage payment was also postponed, he'd be in the same situation.
Well, let's say his building is paid off.
In our situation, we might be screwed the most because we own rental properties that are paid off. But you could also say, because we have no debt, maybe we are in the best situation. We don't need any sort of handout.
This is the sort of conversation that I don't know is being talked about enough in the media. Media doesn't have time for this, and maybe there's no clear plan. This is what's being worked out in the Senate. But in my mind, it just seemed like, well, can't we just do it like a 50-50 split? Like, you owe 50% of your rent, And if you pay 50% of your rent, you're still hurting, but you still have something in your pocket. And if you depend on that income, you're only getting half of that income, so you too are like hurting, but still getting something in return. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like, I don't know.
Sneezing isn't part of the virus, is it?
No, but you're still spreading your germs out. So
That's why I'm doing it over this way.
okay, you're reducing it to like an hour.
I know. When you stand up, you're dead. You're going to walk
That's why
through it.
I don't go over there. I always exit this.
Trust me, the wind is blowing it.
I don't know. It just made me wonder. And then Mike was like, people don't have enough money to even pay 50%.
Well, I mean, that's in the statistic that the average American doesn't have an additional $400.
That's what Joe Rogan said the other day.
I mean, I've heard that outside of Joe Rogan's podcast. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's a statistic that's been going around for a few years.
Man, so if your transmission goes bad in your car,
Yeah, they can't do it. It's
like
they're super irresponsible.
it's just
Everybody's in the habit of spending every penny they have, and once you get in that habit,
yeah.
it's very difficult to get out. And when I say things like that, certain people get angry. They're getting their typing fingers ready, and they're like, they are working as hard as they can, and they don't have the money to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I get it. Not everybody makes a great living, but there are people in other countries that make $1 a day, and they're surviving, right? There are people that do it. I have friends here in Puerto Rico that are making like hundreds of dollars a month, like less than $500 a month, and that's their entire life.
Yeah, but
and
the
they're
argument would be
surviving.
that their bills are cheaper, you know, like
Of course, but that's the point. That's the point. Is like everybody is making a choice. You are making a choice to not live with a roommate, or not continue to live with your parents, or to buy a car on payments,
or to have a
that you can't-
Starbucks every time you go to work.
Exactly, or to have the newest sneakers, or to rent the movie, or to have the cable bill, or to have the iPhone. Like, you are making these decisions, and I understand. There's some people that just make minimum wage and they're really down on their luck. I believe that is a very small percentage. I think, and even those people are making more money than the majority of people on Earth, and the majority of people on Earth still are getting by. So my point is no matter how much you make, if you're in the United States, I think there is a way. Maybe it includes getting some crappy apartment with a bunch of people living in it to get your rent down, but it is possible.
I mean, we've
to
all
save
been
money.
there.
I know. I used to live in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 guys, and one of the guys lived on the couch.
You had a couch guy.
It was horrible. But like at
Joe,
that
the
time,
couch guy.
I think I was making like $15,000 a year. I was broke, and I couldn't afford a car.
You went to McDonald's, didn't you? Wasn't there some meal that you would always get?
Yeah, I was going to.
Or was it?
I went on eBay, and I found this coupon book that had a bunch of Moe's Southwest Grill buy one get one free coupons.
Okay.
And if you go to Moe's and you order one taco for like $1.50 or something, they'll give you basically unlimited chips and salsa.
Yeah.
So I would act like 2 people were buying it, and then I would get like 2 tacos and 2 servings of chips and salsa for like $2. And that was like my day. That's what I was living off of. I remember Pi Jerza telling me the exact same thing. When he was first getting started, I don't know if he lost his job or what, but he had something like $2.75 per day allocated for food a day. And that's all he could do because he wanted to be able to start this business and everything. And so he lived like that for months.
Yeah.
I just don't hear people living like that by choice. You know what I mean?
I mean, I have family members that go out and buy like a brand new car and stuff, and you're like, they have nicer cars than I have. Like we don't have cars, but like I have a crappy 2010 Highlander.
Yeah.
That's what I've been driving for the last 10 years, you know? And so, I don't know, I think too, like, I'm dealing with Kristen right now, she's doing her tax return, and you remember the book, I don't know if you ever had this, my parents gave it to me, it was called like The Automatic Millionaire, and the basic idea is you should be paying yourself first.
Yep.
And most people pay themselves first through like a 401k, which is the most obvious way to pay yourself first because in many cases your employer will match what you put in. So when I was working at Ritz Camera, I kick myself now for not signing up for the 401k and having like $30 taken out of my paycheck without me even seeing it and going into this retirement fund. And
You never signed up for that?
I never did it. Like, I was dumb. I didn't know.
Or, we probably wanted that $30. I needed to get the Moe's Southwest taco, and I was like,
Oh, I remember
can't
when
put that away.
I remember when when you first start a job, you have to decide if you're like a 0 or a 1 on the withholding. And, you know, if you're I might have it backwards, but if you're a 0, it's like you get more money up front, but then you're going to owe taxes at the end of the year. And maybe if you're a 1, your deductions get taken out of your paycheck, and then at the end of the year, you might actually get a little bit of a refund. And so, you know, people would debate at work, like, which one are you going to do this year? Because, like, maybe I could just get all the money up front, live life a little bit bigger, but then you have this huge, I say huge, but it might be like a $200 or $300 tax bill at the end of the year.
Which was a lot for us back then.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I just think like the culture in America is to consume, and few people save. And I will say one thing that was interesting about starting your own business and becoming a photographer, which I think a lot of our audience would appreciate and like relate to, is when you're a photographer, especially a wedding photographer, your income comes in very strange waves. You might get like a down payment or a retainer to sign a contract to say, I'll shoot your wedding in 8 months. So you get this money before you're ever even doing the job. But some of that money might come in on like a very slow period around like Christmas or the winter when you're not really shooting weddings. And that's all you have to live on. You might make a couple $1,000s like in a couple months. But then you get to the summer and you start fulfilling those contracts and like you're making $15,000 shooting a couple weddings and you have all this money coming in. So I always felt like being a photographer, you learn to balance the inflow of money and the expenses really well.
You had to, or else you wouldn't be a photographer for long.
You'd wind up in like December and you're like, oh my gosh, I have no money at all. And I need to get like a day job because I didn't prepare for this. And I think for me, that taught me a really valuable lesson. Not only the book, How to Become a Millionaire, or whatever that book's called, but it taught me, you know, pay yourself, but always keep some money in savings and, you know, live below your means. That was another big one. And I feel like that prepared me, that taught me a very important lesson early that has prepared me for now to where I'm sweating it. Like I'm definitely worried about where we're headed, and I'm worried about the same thing everybody else has, rent and cost of living and food and all that stuff. But
I mean, you have
lost. I've lost 30% of my savings, and I would say everyone on paper, like I actually sold some of it. So until I rebuy back in, and if I make a bad time of getting back in, I would have actually really lost that money. But if you have a 401k, I mean, you got a retirement fund, if I would say don't log into it, but if you have, you're going to see that it's down 30%.
Yeah.
And it's not realized losses yet.
Let's see exactly what it's down right now.
It hasn't been realized losses because you haven't sold it. But in doing Kristen's taxes, there's questions about her retirement and stuff.
34% down right now.
I logged into Kristen's retirement and I helped her move it around when she moved to Puerto Rico, and she had like all these multiple accounts, you know, when you teach and work in different places, and we consolidated them all into one account, and we logged in today to try to do her taxes and stuff, and it was like we never invested it. It's sitting in a money market fund.
There you go.
So that normally is a bad decision, but
yeah.
I'm thinking like, oh, like she's, you know, always worried about income because like in Puerto Rico she gets paid a lot less than she did in Boston. But I logged in there and I was like, oh, wow, you got a good bit of savings and it's not invested at all, which is kind of just the luck of the draw. Like we should have invested it 6 months ago, just forgot to do it. So,
I mean, that's a lucky mistake.
Yeah.
Just talking about when we were wedding photographers, there was this time, I can't remember what year, I've talked about it in other videos, I literally went 6 months and didn't make a single dollar in 6 months.
I remember that time. You were really sweating it.
I was terrified. That was a depression that I hope I never visit again. It was so much more than just feeling like, oh, I'm down because my business isn't doing well or whatever. Like it was a really dark thing. It's hard to explain. But
was it just a random event, or do you contribute it to 2008 and the financial crisis, or was
No, I don't attribute it.
You forgot to turn on your ads, or like
no,
what was it?
I don't know. I remember it just, it was that time of the year where it was kind of like a more dead time, but usually I'd have some money coming in. And luckily, I had saved at least 6 months. I didn't have, maybe I had like $1,000 left. And I think my rent might have been around $1,000 back then. And I remember I started going into places to look for a job. I didn't want to quit wedding photography, but I needed something to supplement it. And then it was like right when I had run out of money the next month, I think I had the biggest month of my career. maybe like 3 weddings came in and I got 50% retainers, and I shot 1 wedding and I got the rest. Something like that happened. And all of a sudden I was good again. But man, it was so scary. And that taught me back then, even though I was super frugal back then and I had roommates and everybody was trying to get me to buy fancy equipment and a new car and a studio, I wasn't buying any of that.
Yeah.
I still wasn't frugal enough back then. And I think I just learned you have to be prepared. I at this point, I want to have years of savings.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if I went frugal, I'd probably have decades of savings.
Most investors would say before you start investing in any kind of market, there's different buckets you should fill first. I feel like this is a totally different type of podcast, but maybe that's where it belongs right here. I don't know. But, you should have, is it 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up? That's like the first bucket you should do.
Yeah.
And then after that bucket's filled, then maybe you start filling in like a Roth IRA or some kind of investing, your 401k, and, that bucket can be filled. And then, down the road, you start worrying about like your kids' education. Like there's all these other things that you could start to do. But
if you're self-employed, I know there's a lot of photographers here. I think you're going to want more than 6 months, because there's going to be opportunities that come up where you need to do a big purchase. You might have the opportunity to buy some equipment used that you didn't think you needed or wanted or whatever. So all of a sudden you need 5 or 10 grand, or an opportunity comes up for you to invest in something like a rental property or someone else's business or any number.
A share space or, whatever it could be.
Yeah, and there's just been so many opportunities in my life that have been possible because I had time available and I had extra money available. And I had friends who were kind of coming along with me at those times. And for one of those 2 reasons, they couldn't invest with me in whatever it was. Like Fstoppers was a big one, where we had some friends that, could have done it with us, but they didn't have the time or the money or the interest to do it. And so you miss out.
Yeah.
And each time one of these opportunities comes to you and you want to be able to say yes, but you can't because of time or money, it's just, we only have so much time on this earth. So,
and that's an interesting thing about this specific moment in time is that I know we're all worried about income. We're all worried about money. And things just got very real, right? And there's a big question out there, like the big unknown, like how long is this going to last? Are we going to get that V curve and everybody's going to keep their jobs and no one's going to get fired? Or is it going to turn out to be a little more dire than that? But the one thing that we all do have at this moment is time. Like we're all locked up for the most part. Most people watching this video, you are or you're about to be locked up in your house. The question we have here now is it's 2 weeks, but I don't think any of us really believe it's 2 weeks. It's probably going to be longer than that.
No, we just heard yesterday somebody who's in deep with the hospitals here in Puerto Rico is saying that they will soon extend it an additional 2 weeks.
Yeah. So we have time, right? As long as you're safe and you're not sick and you have the means to, to last a little bit longer, you have some amount of savings. We have the time, and so I would just recommend, taking time to really think what's important in your life and spend time talking to your friends and family and enjoy being close to people that are important to you, because that's the first thing that I feel like we lose in this society. We're on this rat race, and we it's good to talk to Peter Hurley for an hour the other night. It's good to talk to Mike Kelly for 30 minutes today. The other night you did one of the FaceTime group chats where it was 4 of us, and I'd missed the call and I was like, oh, I wonder if I can still, there's 20 minutes later and I add in. I'm like, man, this is cool. I
know we've never done it before.
Yeah, and it was just fun. So I think that's the first thing you should do is really appreciate your friends and family and spend time with them. But then in the back of your mind, if you have dead time, you could be like you are and just playing video games all day. But if you have the drive to do something bigger, maybe you were thinking about leaving your job before, or you were thinking about starting a business, this is the time to really start working out the details and doing your research and, putting those thoughts into practice. And you might not be able to launch something in the next couple of months. Maybe this turns out to be worse for, this year. Maybe this whole year is a throwaway. 2020 is a year we don't want to talk about again. But as soon as everything turns over and you start to see relief and we start to say the virus is, it's mutated and it's not as deadly anymore and it just kind of peters out, we can all start going back to work. you have a game plan and you say, you know what, like I'm going to do this thing that I've been thinking about doing for so long. And while I was in quarantine, I really put my mind to it. And I think I know what I want to do, you know? And there's also a lot of, you're talking about opportunities of time and money. I feel like there's so much opportunity that's going to come out of this situation. And
Absolutely.
I've talked about Zoom and the video situation where teachers are now going to be able to teach remotely. And there's going to be such a big industry that comes out of that. And with all the negativity, I find a lot of excitement in those sort of things. I don't know what they are yet, but I feel like there's going to be some really cool changes. And, you know, if you can latch onto those, you know, maybe you're going to be on the ride of your life. I mean, we started Fstoppers, and I never would have thought it would turn into what it is. But we took a chance, and now that's like our primary job. So
Yeah, and I know I've been talking a lot about how I feel like in the last couple weeks here, I've been struggling with self-control and doing things that are good for me, eating healthy foods, working out when I don't feel like it, doing positive things rather than just watch depressing news all the time. But I do want to say to anyone watching this who's been considering starting a business, or maybe you're at the beginning of your business or whatever, so much of what it takes to run your own business is simply having the self-control to do what needs to be done and not procrastinate, because 95% of people are incapable of getting themselves to do positive things. And so they are forced to go work for someone else who forces them to show up at certain times, forces them to do what they are told.
certain tasks and
Or else you will be fired. And so they need this constant fear to make themselves do things. And if you can break out of that and say, I'm going to make a decision to do something that's good for me, and I'm going to do it. For me right now, in the last 8 days or whatever, it's been making these videos with you. It's like, it's the one thing that I feel like I'm productive on every day.
Yeah.
And it gives me a reason to not just watch the news and be depressed, but to watch the news tentatively. And when I hear something that's interesting, I screen grab it, I save it in a folder, and I'm
make a
ready to
note
edit it.
and say, we'll talk about this. I totally agree. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And I think like one thing that I think a lot of people are realizing is just, unfortunately, this is like the problem with capitalism, right? Is that you are to some degree disposable. And when you have low unemployment rates and everything, and the economy's booming, like it's very easy to get complacent and just feel like everything's going to be all right. But then when you get in this uncertainty, you realize that you aren't in control of one of the most important elements of your life, and that is your career, your job. Most people don't have careers. They just have jobs. And so if you're the type of person that's looking to break out of that, you know, this is the time to think about it. You know, if you could become your own boss and work your own business, I don't want to mislead anybody. There's a lot of stress that comes with that, because it's easy to say, like, I have a boss who's going to pay me and he's dealing with all the risk. When you run your own business, it's now up to you. But at the same time, I think a lot of photographers, a lot of entrepreneurs that we know that own their own businesses, they're stressed by this situation in a different way. You know, they feel like, I know my business and I know what I'm capable of doing, and I need to now rise to the occasion and just tweak it to like figure out the solution. But a lot of people that are just employed by somebody else, they don't have that same mentality. They have the thought of like, is my boss going to fire me, and where in the world am I going to find work? You know? And so, I don't know. That transition is probably the hardest transition you'll ever make in life. I remember thinking, can I leave something like Ritz Camera and give up the goal of becoming a dentist, which was like the straightforward path. Dental school's hard, don't get me wrong. I don't want to say like that's the easy path, but like that you could see where it leads, right?
Absolutely.
But giving up that idea and saying, I also have this photography business that is now making as much as I'm making at Ritz Camera, and together as two incomes, it's like a good living. Can I cut off the day job where I have the secure, you know, health insurance, the secure paycheck, you know, the secure, you know, schedule where I just know everything where it fits. Cut all that off and say, like, I'm going to now put all of my eggs in this other basket that I'm now completely in control in. That was the hardest thing for me to break. I mean, I remember having conversations with you all the time. You were like, just leave Ritz Camera. Why do you deal with all the stress of like having to go in and open the store and put in 40 hours a week. And like, why do you do that? And it was a mental break. And then I kind of was forced to when Ritz Camera went bankrupt. And that was the greatest moment of my life because it set me on this path of now being in control of my career, essentially. You know, I finally had a career that I didn't have before.
And don't you also find that now your mind has flipped? Whereas before, it was horrifying to leave the corporate job that paid you the $10 an hour because you felt like it would always be there for you.
Yep.
But now, having been able to make your own money, and obviously way more than $10 an hour, don't you look back at Ritz Camera and all those crappy jobs you used to have and think, I was never safe there?
Yeah.
At least now I'm in control of my income and I choose when and how I make money and if I feel like working or not, and if I need more money I can work harder. But when I was working at Ritz Camera,
you could work as hard as you want and you might make an extra sale here or there, but like it wasn't a significant amount.
And you could have been fired like that because this company was mismanaged and they were going bankrupt.
Yeah.
That's no fault of yours. You were a great employee.
I still have nightmares about, like, people have nightmares about being in school naked and giving a presentation.
I still have those.
I have nightmares still being at Ritz Camera and, like, I have to get up. It's 6 in the morning. My alarm goes off and I have to get up and I'm like, man.
That's so funny.
I had a dream that I didn't have to work this job, which was, like, reality. But, like, in the dream, I'm like, man, I really still have to work here.
Wow.
And then I wake up and I'm like, whew.
I haven't shot a wedding in, I'm just going to guess, 5 years. I don't know how long it's been now. I have fairly consistent wedding nightmares. And I used to enjoy shooting weddings, but that I show up and the ceremony's already happened and the bride is in tears.
And
or I show up and I'm in the wrong church and I realize I'm missing, you know, just horrible.
I still have wedding, I always have wedding nightmares where all of my gear is like in a Pelican case on the beach and I'm shooting and the tide has come in and the Pelican case is now like floating out to sea.
Is it closed though?
It's like open. And I'm always wondering, is the waves getting, like, can I save it or is it totally ruined? And I'm always like, I only now have this one camera to shoot the wedding, and I don't know. Hopefully our audience can relate to that. If you're not a photographer, you're probably like, what are these
Where
guys?
did they go on this video? You know, it's funny though, we had a few people in the last video comment and say, we love the video, we love what you're doing, but can you relate it a little bit more to the photography industry?
Yeah.
Because that's where I am. And we had talked about this before we went live, and we were like, there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
There's no photography jobs right now, but then we just went, well, here we are at an hour again. We just went 30 minutes on photography.
This will be easier to edit because there's not a lot of B-roll, but it's just kind of, you know, general advice. Maybe we'll go down this road some more, you know. By no means are we the most successful people in any of these fields, but, you know, we've seen a lot and we've been through a lot of transitions.
You know what I think we might be some of the best at, though?
What?
Is I think we are...
Conspiracy theories?
That's you. I think we have been really good with our wedding photography business and with Fstoppers with keeping our businesses extremely lean.
Yes.
I have seen so many people taste a little bit of success and they keep doubling down on, it's like, because I have all this money from shooting, I'm now going to go out and buy the most expensive cameras on the market.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to go out and buy the photo studio that's, you know, $5,000 a month in rent or whatever.
That's
or
the biggest
I'm
one.
going to buy the new fancy car because my clients need to see me in the Mercedes. Or I'm going to hire 10 employees, and because they're going to be able to shoot under me now, I'm going to make 10 times as much money. And people keep making these bets and these risks with their own business, and eventually they don't hit. And then in a downturn, their expenses are so high.
I just heard from a friend talking about a photography blog where the guy had, I don't even know how this is possible. He had 4 employees making making 6 figures. I think he said it was like $120,000 a year. And they just like wrote articles and like, you know, it wasn't like a job that you would think would make that amount of money. I'm thinking his overhead was $400,000. He had to make at least $400,000 just to pay those 4 employees.
And he went bankrupt because of it.
You know, and I'm talking to photographers in New York City who have studios, and they're like, my rent is, I mean, a studio in New York's like $5,000 to $10,000 for a studio.
At least.
At least.
Yeah, I think
and you're like, if you don't have any clients coming in there, like, it's just horrifying to have that. And some businesses need that and others don't. But I know in Charleston, when I was a wedding photographer, and I was pretty successful at it, I'd have new photographers, up and coming photographers, they would call me and say, Patrick, do you think, like, I really want like a studio space, not even to shoot in, just to like meet with clients.
I almost bought one of those.
And the space is going to be, you know, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, like name your price. And do you think that's a wise decision? And I was always like, you're going to spend $1,000 a month just to impress your clients a little bit, you know, and you're going to have these seasons where, you know, like November, you might not meet with anybody. Everyone's done with their wedding. Nobody has gotten engaged and started planning their wedding. And you're going to have potentially a couple months where you're literally just burning $1,000 to have a space that realistically you're not even going to go into.
I was so close to doing that.
But it's so exciting to
Yeah,
be like,
I know. I just
get
felt
to
like
buy
I would
my
be
couch,
legitimate, you know?
and I get to buy my like couches that they get to sit in. I get to buy all the albums and like have my prints on the wall, and like that idea is so exciting. But sometimes you just need to sit back and say, like, can I meet at a Starbucks, or can I meet at the fanciest cocktail club bar, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe that experience will be just as good. Like, do you need a place with that overhead? And again, if you're shooting headshots every day, maybe you need a studio for headshot photography. But if you're a real estate photographer, it's cool to have the studio and bring people in and say, oh, come meet with me in my space, and I'll show you all my real estate photography. But like, you don't really need that at all. So I think being lean is always, you know, it's the most obvious thing, but it's the hardest thing to like hold back on, you know.
I know. We all want
The
more
new shiny
success, so
thing,
you
yeah.
keep going after it, and I think it's great. And obviously, it works for some people, but you just have to be slow about expanding.
Yep. All right. Well, hopefully, I want to say hopefully we're gonna have good news, but the reality is we're still at the very beginning of this. And
Yeah.
so I'm hearing from people. I know I'm trying to wrap this up, but I'm hearing from people in California, and they're like just getting started, and they're already bored. And I'm thinking, we've been here 8 days. And I think that's why this project is so good. Like, it has given us something to do. And I think you're going to lose your mind, as you saw maybe I did earlier in the week, if you don't have some personal projects and some goals. So go ahead and set those now, and then you'll have something to shoot for, you know, as you go through this entire process.
And if you appreciate this journal that we're doing, we're not necessarily doing this for everyone right now, although we've got some fans that are watching this daily. I'm excited about watching this a decade from now, and remembering that today was the day that Half-Life Alyx came out, and like, oh man, remember the stock market crash? Like, oh, that was so scary. I can't believe, you know, here's what we thought. Oh, look how we thought this was going to happen, but this ended up happening. You know, I think it's going to be really interesting. If you appreciate this, feel free to donate to our Patreon, and 100% of the proceeds that we make during this entire event, we're going to give away to a good cause here in Puerto Rico. I'm pretty sure that all of the federal money, that's free money, helicopter money that's going to everyone in the States, does not include Puerto Ricans, because Puerto Ricans do not pay federal income tax.
We just got, they just announced the ones here that the Puerto Rican government is doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I have them here on my phone. I don't know if you want to go through this, but I don't know exactly what it is. Like, it's really short. It's like 237 million in one-time bonuses for public and private nurses, technicians, EMS, 5 million for investments in hospitals, 240 million for Department of Education. This one, like, I don't know what any of this means. I'm just reading it. 160 million for one-time direct payments to self-employed individuals in small businesses whose incomes have been affected by the disruption of their work and income. I don't know what that means. Is it 160 million is available to like apply for? I feel like I'm in a good place. I'm not going to utilize any of this money. I want to leave it all for people that need it. But I don't know how it works, you know. And I'm sure this same sort of stuff is being passed right now in America and, you know, the United States, and we're going to have to figure that out too. When they say we have $4 trillion, how is that divvied up? I don't know, but I'm sure they're going to announce something soon. But they just announced it for Puerto Rico. So,
guys, we will see you tomorrow.